So in this video, I'm gonna briefly explain my word scrambler, um, the word scramble part, and what I did. I didn't use this stuff, uh, and it was kind of. I mean, I basically swapped instead of two loops. I used one loop, and I pretty much made a random integer, and the random integer changes every time. But I made a random integer and I used that as an index for my array. And I took a random character from my array, and then I put it into the first spot. And then the next time around, I made a new random number that was from 0, and so there's 16 letters here, so 0 all the way up to 15. So I'm no longer looking at this one. And then I took that and put it into the second spot. And then I made it from 0 to 14. So I'm taking all this stuff and putting it into third spot, fourth spot. And so it's just like scrambling it up that way. And I thought, okay, and I'll try that. And then I ran it, and it always put the last, because of the way I made those random numbers, it takes the last character and always puts it first. So then I pretty much copied my code and got another random index and replaced the first one with one of the random letters. But I'm gonna, so I guess that's how, well, I'll explain this again real quick, and then I'll actually just show you. So if you want to try it without, you just after the explanation, without seeing it, then you can do that. You just stop watching the video at a certain point. And if you want to just see it, then you can keep watching the video. So, the first thing I did was I let the user type in a string, and then I took that string, and instead of using trim, I just used the replace method. So I used, like, I made a string called user response, I think, or something like that, and I said user response replace white space with nothing. And so it took all this stuff and took out the white space, and then I stored it back into its user response. And then I took everything and made it lowercase, because that's what it says to do. And I stored it back in its own thing, in its own string again. And then I used tochar array, and I made up a new character array and then stored it in there. So I used tochar array, made all this into an array, and then pretty much just ran through this and swapped the letters around. That was my scrambling, and I randomly picked a number to swap around. I noticed that my last letter was always first, so then I also switched that up. But so I mean, that's, if you want to try and do it that way, I think it was pretty easy. And if you need hints, then you can just keep watching, because I'm just going to open this up. So first I let the user type in stuff, and I called it user response. So user response replace white space with nothing, and then change it to lowercase. I stored it all back into user response. I created a character array, and I put user response in it. So now the user response is in an array, and then I made a loop that creates a random number every time. That's from 0 all the way up until, I guess, the last character in the array here. So, and then the next time around, it goes to one less, and then one less, and then one less, and then one less. So I'm not, like, I'm missing out on getting that last character. And so, like, well, what I did was I got a random number. I took the first letter and I stored it temporarily, and then I got the first position, and I put in a random letter from the array. I put a random letter in there in that first position, and then in the random spot, I took my first letter because that was stored in temp, and I put it. So this just swaps the two. This gets a random position in my array, and then all of this just swaps the two. And since this is going to be going different every time, it's just going through and swapping and swapping and swapping and swapping and swapping. And that's how I chose to scramble stuff. And then at the very end, I noticed that I was missing out on actually scrambling the last letter. It was always coming first. So then what I did was just did this all over again. Except for I made it randomly put the... So I took the first, whatever was in first, which was my last letter. I'll show you. Whatever was in my first array spot, stored it, and then I replaced the array spot, or the first spot, with something that's random in there, and then I did this all over again, just to, except for I specifically took that first one, and so it wasn't. I mean, it's different every time now. And I'll show you. And then I printed it out. And it all works dandy. So I'm just going to type in these so you can tell easily that it's just scrambling them. And every time I run it, it'll be different, supposedly. Probably. Yep. There you go. That's it. I'm done with this video.